So hi everybody, thanks for joining us today for our Studio Suite webinar. My name is Joel Stoner. I'm the founder CEO of Alter Media, and today we are doing a special webinar. It's going to be an overview demo of all of Studio Suite. We're going to be about 60 to 90 minutes. We'll take a 5-minute break about halfway through. We are recording this, and it will be posted to our site hopefully within a week if you're not able to finish it today. If you have questions, go ahead and type them as they come up. I will try to answer them either in line or at the end, depending on when I see them and when I can. We're doing webinars most Thursdays. There's a schedule on our site. If you go there, and you can actually register from there if there's a little Google Calendar section. So, what is Studio Suite? It's a lot of things. Customer relationship management, enterprise resource planning, scheduling, budgeting, project management, barcodes, invoicing, all of those things, and it ties everything together. Now, what a lot of people say is the first time they see Studio Suite, it seems chaotic and noisy. It's kind of like the first time you go to New York City. It seems crazy, and Studio Suite's a lot like that. But once you learn that the streets are in a grid, there's a taxi on every corner and things like that, you start to feel comfortable. And if you're doing media production management, you need these tools just to manage your business. Whether what you're doing is gaming or corporate production management or post-production or production or post-production, broadcast or advertising or government or education, all of those people have the same kinds of needs and very similar workflows. And these are the kinds of people that are using Studio Suite. Now, if you think about this for a minute, you have to realize that the workflow that NASA has is going to be different than Sony, different than SAP, or different than Crawford or Off Hollywood or Click3X, big post houses, or different than Google or YouTube. And the reason for that, one of the big hallmarks of Studio Suite is that it's extremely flexible. Everybody's got different workflows, different preferences about interface design. And with Studio Suite, you have the control over that, and that's why we've been able to get so many customers, is because we can adapt Studio Suite to the way they work, and they can adapt it to the way it works, because it's very often based on the data that you put into it rather than some rigid structure that you have to comply with. So let's talk about the module structure of Studio Suite. At the very highest level, we've got a production, and a production equates to a season of a TV show, a feature film, maybe a large multi-phase project where you're doing maybe a whole campaign or a trade show where you've got graphics and video and sound. Each one of those needs to be managed separately. And of course, you can have many different productions going on at once. And within a single production, you may have a project or multiple projects. And a project would relate to, in this kind of hierarchy, an episode of a TV show, or a large aspect of a film, like pre-production, the shooting aspect, the editing aspect, the mixing aspect, or maybe it's a whole reel of film, or maybe it's just a one-off job. So projects can be a part of a larger production, or they can be their own standalone little thing that aren't connected to a project. Within each project, you have one or more events. And what is an event? Well, an event is when you've got some resources. And in our world, we've got different kinds of resources. We have rooms, equipment, people, it can be contacts or clients. We have services that we provide, like editing or compositing, or maybe just deliveries. And then we have media inventory as well, materials. Maybe it's even just batteries that you provide. And all of those things have rates. You can have one or more rates for each resource. You could have an hourly rate, a daily rate, a weekly rate, a client-specific rate, a rental-style rate, and you can even have different rate cards, so that if you're doing corporate work, that's one set of pricing. If you're doing commercial work, that's another set. If you're doing in-house work for your friend, that's another set of rates. And a rate can track both the charge and the expense, which means that when you start putting together these resources into a project, you get a very instant idea of your profit loss, of the project that you're working on, so you know how much headroom you've got to make adjustments for pricing. But back to our story, is when you add or combine these resources, rooms, equipment, contacts, people, services, with a calendar event with a rate. That's what we call an event. And again, a project can have one or more events on it. And these things are what appear in the calendar. So we've got a calendar here, and this is also visible on your mobile devices through either what we call Studio Suite Web Glancer on your mobile devices or through Google, which we'll get into in a little bit. And those events are also what show up on an invoice, and those invoices can get exported out to something like QuickBooks or other third-party accounting software. And then when we're doing, the point of all of this that we're talking about here is to create content. So there has to be some kind of library involved to capture all of the media assets, whether they're physical media assets or digital media assets. In the process of doing that, very often there's tasks involved, like read the scripts, approve the scripts, load the content, start the edit. Some of those things may be billable, some of them aren't, and then maybe you need to notify people about those tasks as well. So that's all inside of Studio Suite. And of course, this all links back to the all-important client, because none of this would happen if we didn't have somebody paying for it. So this is kind of like the mind map of Studio Suite that I wanted you to see and kind of, stick in your brain so you can understand how it all works. Let's go ahead into Studio Suite, shall we? So if you've seen one of the videos up on our site called Why You Need Studio Suite, I'm not going to play it now, but there's a million little sticky notes, and it's like that chaotic New York scene, and then they all fade into a list of all these different modules, and then it morphs into the Studio Suite menu, and that's what we're looking at here. Now, so these are all the modules that come with the Studio Suite, and not all of your users may need access to these. So because Studio Suite is multi-user, you may have some users that just need a few big buttons on their Studio Suite. And you can obviously control which buttons they're going to be able to see. But this is how you can manage who can see what information in Studio Suite. And there's some other little tricks, like maybe you want to have a different kind of color on the background. Here's a nice mountain scene that's going to be my background. And you can always set those up yourself. I'm just going to go back to my default. So let's talk about this main menu a little bit. We can see on these buttons, some of them have indicators. I can see I've got 7 projects overdue, 66 web requests that are pending, 17 tasks overdue, 302 invoices. Wouldn't that be nice? If anything was due today, we would see a little badge there on the right side. On the right side of the screen, we see the daily notes, which everybody can type into and see. Things like pizza in the kitchen. Excuse my typing as we do this. I'll be talking and typing at the same time. Not easy. And then below that, I see my messages and my tasks. And when I hover over these things, I'll see further details about it. So there's a little hover over there. And then at the very bottom, we're going to see all the line items or events that are scheduled today. So I can see right from the main menu everything that's scheduled. If I want to edit something, I can just click on it and make an adjustment here. Let's say, well, that's going to end at 6, and I'm going to put a little note in here about what's going on. And I can save that change right from Studio Suite, right from the main menu, I meant to say. Now, let's suppose I'm just a worker bee, and I don't care about all this other stuff. I just want to see my stuff. Well, I can do that. I'm just going to filter this to only view my events, because that's all I care about. And then, of course, I can see, hover over that, edit that if I need to. But if I want to see everything, I can do that. So that's kind of the main menu. Next, I'm going to show you the regular interface. Let's go. Actually, you know what? I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go into the setup. I'm going to show you some fundamentals. So this is where you would put in your company name and your primary company. Some of our customers kind of pose as several different companies. They might have a production company, a development company, a rental company, a post-production facility, all those different kinds of things. And you can definitely set that up in Studio Suite and have it kind of work as multiple companies. And that's very flexible because you can if you're creating something for My Great Company, the letterhead for that, the invoicing for that will reflect the same, and you also get different reporting based on that. It's also multi-language, so if you're working in a different language, we can set that up. So I'm going to go here, and this is where you would insert the logo for your company. This is where you would define the different tax rates that you're working with, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here. But just know that there is a bunch of preferences that we can set up here. The next important thing is kind of user accounts. This is where you define all of the different users of Studio Suite, and you can see I've got a bunch here. And they all have what we call a privilege set. And a privilege set corresponds to kind of a role-based security or access level into Studio Suite. Obviously, the accounting person, you would want to have a different level of access than the editor engineer, who probably should not see a lot of financial information. And we've got a lot of administrator accounts here, but we've got a bunch of them. So I'm going to disable one of these, or enable one of these. And this is the different privilege sets that you can have: administrator, owner, manager, accounting technician, scheduler, producer, sales. And they can see kind of decreasing functionality and visibility of important information in Studio Suite. And then within that, if we go into a particular user account, I'll go into mine. Here's all the user-specific preferences, where I can pick the different main menus I like, and also, most importantly, account permissions. So this is where we can go in and say, well, we like Joel, but we don't really want him messing around in the invoicing module. I'm going to turn that off. And then let's go maybe to the equipment inventory module. And we're going to allow him to view equipment records, but we don't want him to delete any equipment records or even be able to edit them. So he should be able to see what's in there, but not edit anything, not delete anything. He can create new stuff, things like that. Maybe we don't want him to see the rates that are attached to equipment as well. So you can see there's a really high degree of resolution to apply to different users within your system. There's over 200 account permissions, so you can get to exactly what you need. And you can copy and paste those as well. So if you have come up with this perfect algorithm of perfect permissions that you want to apply to a bunch of people, you can just copy and paste them across. Next, I'm going to go into the contacts module, where I was a minute ago, and let's take a look at kind of the basic interface that we see throughout the Studio Suite. I'm going to go look at my questions here. Let's see. Will this webinar be recorded? Yes, it is. Somebody asked, is it competing with the likes of Schedule and Zytec? Yes, exactly. Those are our prime competitors, and we're, I think, a good bit affordable, but I'm not going to get into that speech right now. Let's just talk about Studio Suite and our contacts. So this is a detail screen of contacts where we can see callbacks, calls and notes, letters, obviously name, address, and phone numbers and things like that. If we go to the list tab, this is where we can see them all. And we've got some quick find things here. So if I want to find all of my clients or all of my vendors or all of my employees, I can do that very quickly. And as we go through these tabs across the top, notice that some of them have these red dots. So if I go to the More Info, the red dot means that there is information there. And so from this More Info tab, I can see and also jump to all of the projects that this person's been involved with, either as a client or as a participant, meaning that they worked on it as a producer or editor or engineer, or as a talent. Maybe they were a voiceover or on-screen person. So Studio Suite is kind of tracking all that together. And as we flip through our records here, we can see all the different projects that people have been involved with over time. And if I jump to one of these, let's try this one here. This takes me right into the projects module, and I'm looking exactly at that project, and I can see all the details, the resources, dates, times, statuses, and all that. I'm going to hit the back button now to jump back into contacts. I'm right back where I was. So here we are in contacts, and from this web viewer tab, I can see a lot of information about this person. We've got these pre-formatted searches. So as I'm kind of flipping through my list of contacts, I can see a lot of information about the people. So I can go look at Google Maps. I can see what they've done on IMDb, any postings they've put up on YouTube, maybe AllMusic, LinkedIn. If I was logged into my LinkedIn, it would show, and any other URLs that I've got. So, just as you're talking to your clients on the phone, you get a lot of information from them. It makes it very easy right in Studio Suite. Maybe I want to call this guy up. I just click on the new button there. I say I called, and I'm just going to start typing whatever it is. Sometimes keeping track of these phone calls and communications that you have is very important. So Studio Suite makes it easy to do that. There's some other tabs here in contacts: employee information, financial information, and of course this tab would be locked out to people at a lower level access. But from here, we can see all of the invoices that are related to a particular client. I'm going to flip to one that's got some. So here's one that's got one, and I can jump to a particular invoice. Oops, see, I'm not allowed to view that. You know what I should do? Sorry about this. I'm going to take a little detour here and jump back into my user account and give myself permission to show you the invoice module. Select all. Okay, now I should be able to do that. See how that works? So if I go to financial, and now I'm going to be able to go look at that particular invoice. So here's the 3 invoices for that client. And of course, I can jump back to my contact record to get right to where it was. We can also set up client-specific rates. So if a particular client, we do work for them at a special price, Studio Suite will track that and automatically use it next time. Let's go to the Media Assets tab. This is going to show us all of the media assets that belong to this contact. So as I filter through my list here, I can see one. Let's go back to this guy. This is going to allow me to go to, that's the go to button, this record in the library module where we see all the information about a particular media asset. I'm going to hit the back button again. And so here I'm in contacts again, and I'm going to go to the attach an FTP tab, which has a red dot on it, showing me that I do have a media asset for this. And I'm going to flip through my contacts in here, and I see all the different ones. Here is a Word document. So I can click on that and see if that's still there. Yep, so it's going to open up that script for me in Word. So I've got instant access to all of those. So you can see that it's very easy to track media assets. In fact, I can just drag a file from my desktop right into Studio Suite. And it's basically storing a pointer to where that file is. It's not ingesting that. It's not moving that file around. So kind of an important fact here is that if we want a bunch of people to be able to access that file, we would want to grab it from a shared location. Some shared server folder. And then that way, if anybody else on Studio Suite clicked on this file, it would allow them to have access to it. If it's on your laptop and you've got it closed or at home or something like that, obviously they wouldn't be able to access it. So we can attach a bunch of different kinds of files, and we can embed them. So if we wanted to put something in Studio Suite, we could. We could also do whole folders. So let's say I just want to drag this folder in. Maybe those are all the files on a particular project. I can open that up, and here's that folder. We can also record a sound, embed a picture, link a QuickTime. This one's pretty neat. We can actually do proxies and URLs. So if we're posting content up to say YouTube or something like that, or we've got a folder full of proxies, video proxies that we want to link to a given client, we can link those. And there's also an integrated FTP client. So if we need to retrieve any kind of digital asset from a website through FTP or deliver one through FTP, we can do that right inside Studio Suite. And of course, it'll keep all the logging of that, so we've got evidence that it's been done, and everybody else on my Studio Suite will know about that. And we can also have the option to bill that back to the client, back to the project, and maybe we'll get into that in a little bit. Every module in Studio Suite also has a reports tab, and this is where you can see the kinds of things you'd expect to see from the module that you're in. Since we're in contacts, we can see things like company lists and phone book printouts and envelopes and labels. And as I mentioned earlier, you can actually set up multiple companies. So let's say I'm posing for this moment as my great company. My letterhead would see the details of that. Or if I want to go to Fidelity Images, I'm going to see the letterhead information on that, on all of my printouts. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of printouts in every module to show the kinds of reports that we need. And there's an audit log. So every change that somebody makes on a record in Studio Suite gets logged, and they don't have the ability to change it. So as I flip through these records, again, we can see who made the change, when they made it, what they changed it from, and what they changed it to. And this is great because maybe you deleted a phone number by accident. You can come back to this screen and find the whole history of it. Or maybe somebody lowered the price of something when they weren't supposed to. You can see who did that, when they did it, and then you go find out. So we've got really the ability to have super accountability for all the people that are using Studio Suite to find out what, when, and why they did certain things. And also, if you have mistakes, you can do things to repair your mistake. So I'm going to go back to my list view here, and I'm going to sort by status. And this is going to put all of my bookable people at the top of the list. What's bookable? When we make something bookable, that means that they are a resource. they are bookable in our calendar. We can book them in projects. And so your staff would be bookable. Your freelancers would be bookable. Your clients aren't typically bookable unless they're also um, a bookable person for you. So I have bookable people, and we've probably also got some bookable rooms or spaces. So this is my equipment module. I've gone ahead and put in a bunch of different rooms. Some of them are bookable. I've got some offices and closets and things like that that aren't bookable. But notice I've also got some trucks that are bookable too. So a truck is kind of like a room with wheels. And then we can go into each particular room and see the different rates that correspond. So I'm going to go look at my Studio A. Right, and just for kicks, I'm going to create a new room right now. So I hit the new button at the top, and let's call this the webinar room so we can all see it. And I'm going to call this a control room, and it's in my building 1, and I'm going to make it bookable. And again, that means that it's going to be able to appear in the calendar, and I'm going to say yes, put it in the calendar. And so now when I go look at my calendar in a little bit, I'm going to see that room in there. It's just that easy. And I'm going to make a rate for it. So I talked briefly about this a bit ago in our map. But now I'm going to create a rate. So I click that button, create new rate. I'm going to call it a regular rate, and I'm going to call it, say, hourly. So we can count the unit of measure a number of different ways in Studio Suite, by the hour, by the day, by the week, lockout, or each or one time. So if we're counting things like frames or minutes or something like that, we can do that. Let's say I'm going to charge $100 an hour for this, but I know it costs me $10 an hour for this, which means that when I book this room, I'm making roughly a $90 an hour profit or a 900% margin. And I can also put in a market rate. So let's say I'm in a corporate environment, and I know that if I did the same job out in a commercial facility, it would cost $200 an hour. And this is great for those corporate places where you need to justify the work that you're doing and why it costs so much. We can also say that a particular rate is client specific. So here's our client picker. I'm not going to pick one right now, but that's just know that we could. We could also set up a default action for when we're doing this rate. So let's say we're doing editing in this item. And then we could also pick some different rate cards. So I'm just going to use all for this rate. But if this rate was only effective when I did, I don't know, educational pricing, I could pick that rate card. And then here's external accounting details, and this would work with QuickBooks, MYOB, or Account Edge, or any other higher-end thing. We've done a number of accounting integrations with high-end software, Sage, SAP, things like that. So it's those kinds of things we do on a custom basis for you, and just know that it's there. So we can create multiple what we call rate splits for these if we've got several different prices that we go for. And there's some other details down at the bottom that I'm going to kind of skip over for now. But just know that this is where you define what you're charging, how much it costs you, and therefore your profit, maybe a market rate, and any other external accounting details. And again, we can create as many rates as we want. So I'm going to create a new one just very quickly without all of my talking. I'm going to call this a daily rate. And let's say this is by the day, the unit of measure, and we're going to charge $1,000 for this, and we know it costs us maybe $100 to do that, and the market rate for this is maybe $1,500, something like that. So just that easy to create a rate. Now I've got two, and I'm going to make the hourly rate the default. So now within a given room, I want to see the equipment that's installed. So I've clicked on my equipment info tab, and I'm going to go to a room here that's got some stuff in it. So now I'm back to my Studio A, and I can see all the equipment that's in here, and I'm going to click the Go To button. Now I'm in the equipment inventory module, where I can see things like serial numbers, barcodes, purchase dates, whether I purchased or leased it or own it, the cost of it, the current value, any earnings. This is kind of neat. So Studio Suite is comparing how much we paid for it, and then summarizing all of the revenue that we've generated from it, and I'll show you that in a minute, and showing us, so far we've lost money on this item if we're tracking it like in a rental environment. So down the bottom, we can create things like packages. So maybe when you book the camera, I think I've got a model of that here. Go to my basic camera set. When I book the camera, it's going to bring along the lens and a light and a tripod, and that makes it so I don't have to think about all that. I just book the camera. All those other child items are booked automatically. Some of you, this may be very important. For other of you that don't track equipment, it's not. So just bear with us for a minute while we go through equipment here. And so there's a lot that we can do here in equipment. We can see a little picture, put in some comments. It's also calculating a depreciation schedule. So this does this a little bit more flexibly, if that's a word, than something like QuickBooks or other accounting software, because we can put in different purchase dates, create a residual value, end of life, what the term is going to be, and then it's basically we can see the value of this on any given day. And there's reporting, so you can actually, over in the Reports tab, print out a depreciation schedule of how much is all of my equipment worth at this point in time, based on the depreciation schedule. So I'm going to jump back to detail. Oh, I see some questions piling up here. Let me take a break out to look at these. Somebody is asking if we interface with Schedule. That's funny. We can import data from Schedule. I will mention that we've moved several people off of Schedule into Studio Suite, where we were able to export the data out of Studio Suite and then into Studio Suite. Let's see. And somebody asked, how is SAP using it? Well, many of you know SAP is a very large database company, and even though they are obviously very skilled at creating databases, they've chosen Studio Suite to be able to manage their in-house media production management, because we've got a really great system already built. They don't have to rebuild it. So they can purchase Studio Suite for a lot less than it would cost for them to build it again, even though that's what they do. Okay, back. I think that's it for the questions at the moment. So proceeding along, still in equipment, let's look at rates. So I showed you rates earlier in rooms, but I want to show you one other aspect of this, which is when we do a day as the unit of measure, we have the option to do bill days per week. Let's say when you book this camera set, I'm going to sell it to you. If you book it for a week, I'm only going to bill you for 3 days. Or if you book it for a month, I'm only going to book it for 12 days or 10 days. And that's because that's how the rental workflow works. They don't bill every day. If you book it a week, you get special pricing. And so we've got that built in there. That algorithm is very flexible, allows you to kind of set up any kind of pricing structure that you need. So I'm going to continue perusing through equipment here. I'm going to go to my event history, and this is showing us all of the usages of this piece of equipment. And if you recall earlier, I talked about that earnings. So this is showing me that I've made $4,150 on this, but I spent $66,000 on it, so I'm still a little under on this. Hopefully you're having better luck than some of our sample data here with your equipment purchases. Separately from tracking each of these, by the way, it's also the total hours that it's been used. There's a Scan Manager tab within equipment, and this allows us to essentially scan in, walk around our equipment closet, scan in different barcodes, and basically just put a date timestamp on the presence of each piece of equipment. So I'm going to do one of those. I'm going to put in, say, Joel is here in the equipment locker, and I'm going to try to scan in a barcode. I think I'm just going to try to remember one here. P1020, crossing fingers. There. So it went and found this particular item, which is a microphone, and it put today's date on it, the time that Joel said it's in the equipment locker. So the value of this is that we can then start to do searches based on a date range. So maybe I want to find everything that I have scanned since January of this year, or maybe more importantly, not scanned since January of this year. This is going to bring me to a list of all of the 248 out of 250 equipments that I've not scanned yet this year, and that could potentially be my list of missing equipment that I want to go look for. That's all in the Event History tab. There's a Maintenance History tab. It's going to track all the repairs of equipment. I'm going to skip over that for a little bit, and then go into the Web Viewer, and I like this a lot. This is similar to the one in Contacts I showed you earlier, where I can just flip through all of my equipment, and it's going to do instant searches on Google or Craigslist for all the stuff that's for sale. Maybe I want to go to eBay, find all instances, or maybe I need to go find a new motherboard for my video deck if I'm still using it. So I can see what everybody else is buying and selling all of my equipment for. I could even perhaps go to the manufacturer's website and maybe look information there, or download a PDF user's guide. So I'm going to go over to my attached and FTP tab, and previously I've done that, and so I've attached this user's guide for this piece of equipment, and there it is. So now everybody's got instant access to all the information on a website about all of your equipment and any PDFs that you've attached. And since we're in equipment, I'll mention maybe you might also want to scan in the purchase receipt or schematics or something like that to the equipment that you've got, so you've got it all instantly readily available. So I talked earlier about this bookable thing. You know, I've got bookable people, bookable rooms, and I've got some bookable equipment. And then there's other kinds of things. Maybe there's services that you're providing. So I did that too fast. Let me go slower. I'm going to go into the categories and items module. And this is where we can put in things that aren't necessarily rooms or equipment or people. So I'm going to go to my services tab here. Filter, I should say, and we've got some other things. So maybe we're just doing a digi delivery, or maybe we're doing a costume design, or conforming, or colorization. Maybe these things we don't always have to occupy a specific resource when we do them. Maybe it's just lunch. Maybe we need to book that onto a project. And just put a price to it. So this is where you can create any kind of new item that's not a person or equipment or a room. It's just a service that you do. And by the way, we've also got in here the AICE and AICP budget items. So if you want to start putting together budgets within Studio Suite based on those two budgeting formats, you can certainly do that. So while we're here in this module, I'm going to mention that over on the right side are all of my calendar resources. These are the items that I've whittled down from, maybe I've got 1,000 pieces of equipment. I want just a smaller subset of those to appear in the calendar. Maybe I've got 30 rooms in my facility, but I don't need my closets and lockers and things like that to appear, or offices. So only my bookable items appear over here. And the ones that have these little color icons here, those are the ones that I've got set up to look at in Google Calendar, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So we talked about all those bookable items, bookable people, bookable rooms, bookable equipment, and the other ones that we can create here. And they all show up in the calendar, and I've just clicked on that. And notice that, it didn't appear. I'm going to go ahead and put in that extra little room that we created called Webinar Room. There it is. I'm going to click on that. Remember, I created that a bit ago, and now I've selected that, so it will now appear in my calendar. And as we're looking at that, I'm going to look at my pile up of questions here and see if there's any new ones that I should answer. Someone, excuse me. Someone asks, how do we manage scheduling programs to be broadcast? That's actually not within the scope of Studio Suite. Studio Suite's resource management application, media asset management, scheduling, project management. We don't get into doing broadcast schedules that you would see on TV. That's something outside of our realm. Inventory. Someone's asking, if I'm editing an invoice or a piece of inventory and a coworker is also editing that same file, will the system warn us that our edits might conflict with each other? Well, what actually happens is something called record lock. So many people can view the same record at the same time, and one person can edit it at the same time. So if, let's say, I am editing a phone number, no one else can edit phone numbers on that contact at the same time. Everybody else can view all those phone numbers, but essentially there's something that's only going to let one person edit a record at a time. And because of the way Studio Suite is designed with a bunch of kind of relational databases, a lot of information is parsed off into separate tables. So you'll find that that's very rarely a problem, and it won't let you make a mistake. I guess that's what the person was concerned about. Another question was, can we show in the calendar the availability of the resource? I think, yes, that's what we're looking at right here. So the calendar can appear in a separate window, and there's a bunch of neat tricks about our Studio Suite calendar. So on the left side, what we're looking at here is the resources. And as I hover over some of these, it's going to show me information, things like phone numbers. So if I want to call up somebody, or call into a room to see how they're doing on the project. I can do that. What resources appear on the left side are governed by your preset. You can create as many presets as you want. Alex has a preset. I'm going to load his preset. He's got more stuff in his preset than mine. Maybe I want to go just look at equipment and see how all of my equipment is allocated. So notice I'm zoomed into Thursday. That's today. I don't have any equipment booked today. I can shift click and I can zoom out. And so now I can look at a month or a week or month or a bunch of things, a good range of time at once. And I can see if I go to yesterday, I did have the Arri Alexa basic camera set booked and the Red One camera booked. So I'm going to zoom back out again, and I'm going to go back to my preset because that's the one I like. So you create as many presets as you like. You could have a preset just for equipment, another one just for people. Obviously, a preset can have contain multiple items across categories, this red outline here is indicating a conflict. So I know that Joe Producer is double booked. So how could I resolve that? Well, I could just drag one of those items to another resource, and this hopefully will resolve the conflict. It doesn't. The Joe Producer is very double booked, so I'm going to drag his other thing. Now, because I changed that one thing, it knows there's many other things on the same project on the same day. And it's asking me, it's going to make it easy for me to apply that same change to all the other items. I could do this kind of surgically if I wanted to, or match only the times or match only the status, or I'm going to just say no in this case. So then it's reminding me again that I've got conflicts, and hopefully this will have resolved my conflict. Boy, he's just really booked up there, so I'm going to try to do this. Anyway, I'm not going to resolve all these conflicts, but maybe that will have done it. There we go. Yeah, so all the red lines are gone, and now Joseph Producer is no longer double booked. What about these colors? The different colors mean status. So you can create as many different statuses as you like and corresponding colors. And what do I mean by that? So if I go over here to booking statuses, I can create confirmed, hold, quote, bumpable, checked in, checked out, canceled, complete, vacation, as many as I want, and each one of them can have a color. So if I get a nice little color picker there to be able to specify that. So once you learn what your colors are, you know how everything is set up here. In my world, yellow is hold. I forget what purple is actually. Well, I can hover over that and see. So I hover over this detail, and that means it's approved. This one is bumpable, which means that we can move it around. And maybe this we don't want to work past midnight on this. So I'm just going to drag the end of this down to here. And as I make those changes, if you look at the top of that tooltip, you can see that end time is changing. So I'm going to end at about 11 o'clock there. Do I want to change everything else to match? I'm going to say no, but I could say yes if I want to. It's reminding me there's conflicts. So also notice, if you remember in the beginning when I typed in pizza in the kitchen, that shows up in the calendar here as well. So I can put other notes. I'm going to update this to say it is all gone. And if I go back to look at my main menu, it's been updated there as well. So there's always this kind of two-way communication going on. And I can also see at the bottom of my calendar tasks, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. So some other aspects here. What if I want to be able to break out my resources here by status? So if I click this checkbox here, I can see that Joe Producer is booked in this time period with a couple different statuses as both bumpable and approved, and it's going to put each of them on a separate line so I can kind of see a hierarchy of statuses there. We've got some other ways to view things. Maybe we don't want to see it by resources, but we do want to see it by project. So I can see here that this is all of the projects that I've got going on in this period. I've got the shooting duplication project, I've got a de facto project, and I've got a pre-production NIC project going on in this period. And if I click this box here, it's going to break it out into all of my resources. So I can see on the de facto project, I've got Edit 1, Edit 2, Avid 1, Byron, Joel, and Joseph Producer all working on that same project, and so on and so forth. And what about production? Well, if you remember from our beginning item, I only have one production going on here, or that mind map I showed you. And when I hover over that, I can see all of the other items that are within that project. So there's a bunch of different views to look at here in the calendar, and this is all in what we call the timeline view. It's my favorite one because we can zoom in and out and all that. But there's some other views that people like a lot too. This one is the linear week view. And we can scroll around if I want to go look at the previous week or next week. This is a little bit more of a, I don't know, primitive view. This is the view that we had in To-Do Suite up until version 9. And these work the same way. You hover over them and you see the details. We can go into a particular day if I want to go look at April 9th, NAB Day 2, and see, again, my resources on the left side, and then the details of each booking there. And then we've got some more traditional style calendars. Here's a traditional week view, and I can drag out and see my resources on the left side. So if I don't want to see the Final Cut Suite, I can turn that off. If I don't want to see Edit 1, I can turn that off, on or off. But I don't like this view anyway because it's hard to tell based on this. I can't tell availability. There's what's booked when. I can't tell really. That's why I like this timeline view, because we can see exactly. Edit 1 is booked at 9 o'clock. Avid 1 has nothing in it. Hey, I know. Why don't we book Avid 1? So I can see that right now it's the blue line tells me right now. I'm going to go ahead and let's pretend we put in an Avid 1 session at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to stretch that out to say 5:30. And let's say I know that I want to have Byron work on that too. So I want him to come in early. So I'm going to click in Byron's row just a little bit before 10 o'clock. And he's going to have to stay a little bit late just to wrap up and everything like that. So I can pick multiple resources and have different times right from the calendar. And I'm going to book that as a project. So I hit this button here called Book Project. I can either add this to an existing project or create a new one. I'm going to create a new one. And now it's asking me to locate a client. So I'm going to put in, who do we have? Do we have ABC in here? We do. So let's pick John Wheeler at ABC. And as soon as I do that, it's showing me the aging. So this is just all obviously fake data. There's no real John Wheeler at ABC. But let's pretend that they're 121 days overdue on paying their bill. And so I would be able to tell this guy, by the way, hey, can you take care of this bill before we proceed? So only the yellow fields here are required. I'm going to call this webinar demo is the name of my project. And it's put in some default times from my user account. And it's also set up some slots for me of the kinds of people that I typically have on my projects. I've got a producer, and let's say I've got a coordinator and an editor. And these are the people that are in the contacts module that have corresponding names, titles, I should say. And let's say we're going to have a writer. And from my contacts module, I'm fortunate to have Sam Tolstoy as one of our writers. And you can see as I select those, if there's a phone number or email available, it will pop those in as well. It's showing me down here that I can, the other items that I've booked, Avid 1 and Byron, if I wanted to maybe add some more items, I could do that from here. And it's also inherited the default taxes and terms for my client. So ABC John Wheeler, his terms are 60 days. And these are the taxes that he has. If I change to a different client, those would change. And of course, I could say to John, hey, listen, because you're overdue on our old bill, I'm going to put you to COD on this. And if we have to ship your stuff to San Diego this time, I'm going to charge you the San Diego tax on this. And although you normally, Sam or John Wheeler, have a 10% discount since you're late, I'm going to clear that out and not offer you a discount. Or, I'm going to be generous and give you a 30% discount. Now, I can also go in and specify that I'm going to create this as a budget if we're in that phase of the project, or both, or just as an actual. Since we started this project from the calendar, we're kind of going in an actual style workflow, and I'm going to hit the next button, and we're going to, I'm going to back up a second. My user account, my default company is Planet Perfect Post, but let's say this particular project was for my great new company. This project would be flagged for that company within my own internal companies, or I'm just going to put it back to my default one, Planet Perfect Post. So this is how you can kind of divide up the different work that you've got into potentially different companies. And again, you're going to have different reporting based on that as well. And over here in the bottom right is the rate card that I'm going to use on this project. I'm just going to use my normal one. I'm going to hit the next button. It's going to give me the option to drop back into the calendar if I like, or proceed into the projects module. And it's reminding me again here that I've got some conflicts. And you might be saying, well, I didn't book those things. So here's my option, calendar or project. I'm going to go look at my project. And here we are. And you'll recall that I only booked a couple things there, Avid One and Byron. Why is all this other stuff there? That's because I set up Avid One to have a bunch of child items, what we call also books. And this one's a little bit silly. I should have looked at this before the webinar. When I book Avid One, it's going to book the Sony video machine. When I book that, it's going to book as a child of that Studio C, which books Joseph Producer. And then it looks like Avid One also books the editor. And when I book Eddie Editor, a child of that is Edit 1, and then Studio C again, so I can see it's created a conflict, and Joe Producer comes with there. So that was a bad example for a webinar. But the same thing is with Byron. When I book Byron, he comes with a hard drive and a microphone and the super collector, and I can expand and collapse all those things. And we're going to take a break in a moment. But I just want you to notice that when I collapse these things, look at the price for Avid One. It's $18.95 for the room, and all of the other items have come in with their default prices. But when I collapse the Avid One, the total for that is showing me the summary of all the other items that have collapsed inside of it. So we're about halfway through right now. I'm going to take, let's take like a 5-minute break. It's 1:50 right now on my clock. Let's come back at 1:55. And if you want to assemble some questions in the meantime, we'll answer those first when we get back. So we'll be right back. See you shortly. And we are back. Hopefully everybody's back. So what I'm going to do is look at some questions here for a second. Okay, the question is, can this system be automated to create certain files, such as invoices or production forms, after creating an event on a calendar? Yes, absolutely. So we created that event on the calendar just before the break. It put all this stuff in here. And at the top of the screen here, I've got a couple options. I hit the print this button, and I have the option to either show prices if I'm doing this, for the client. We're going to talk about money, or not if we're going to give this to the staff, the crew. So I'm going to show it with prices just so we can see what that looks like. And these forms are all customizable. Again, I talked about one of the hallmarks of Studio Suite is that because it's running in FileMaker, you have access to layout mode, go into the script maker, modify all this stuff, but you can change the fonts and the colors and the positions and remove some of the fields if you don't want them, or add other fields in that you do. And here we can see what's going to get printed out. So if you want to change the colors, you can do all that stuff. I said that, I don't need to repeat. There's also an option to email it. So what this is going to do is basically create a PDF of that same document. This time I'll do without prices, so we can see what that looks like. Somebody's been playing with my form here. That would look very similar, typically minus the prices. So I can email this either directly out of Studio Suite, or I can pass it through an email client such as Outlook or Mail or something like that. And just for a demonstration, I'm going to do it through Studio Suite. And we can see here that it's already to the client of the project. The subject is already set up to the name of the project, and the PDF is already attached. And I just have to put, hi, here is the quote, or whatever it is. And I could obviously send that out to my crew as well if I wanted them to see it. There's also notifications. So what if I wanted to notify my crew about this whole project? So I'm going to hit the notifications button, and it's going to come up with some basic information about this already filled out. The client is ABC. The project name is Webinar Demo. That's the project number. Please be on time for a 10 a.m. start. So this is going to go out as a text to people that I've got in my contacts module that have a SMS account set up. I didn't go into the detail there, but these are the people in contacts that have that. I can set when it's going to go. I'm going to do it right now. I'm also going to do it 1 hour before, and maybe 1 day before the actual event. So if I hit send here, that's going to go out to those folks, and they're all going to get notified on their phone about that. So that's pretty neat. And we've got notifications for projects, notifications for tasks which we haven't even gone into, and then we can also do notification for an individual event. So here's the detail of a particular event. Notice up here there's a notification button, and also an email if I wanted to email just this particular event. So make it very easy to do right out of Studio Suite. Another question. With the necessary permissions, can I do this from my smartphone? You can do some things. I'm going to get into that shortly. I should probably hurry up and get there. I'm going to show you some of that in a bit. Another question is the app available for BlackBerry? Sort of is the answer. When we get into the iPad and iPhone functionality, I'll tell you now. There is a FileMaker app for iOS called FileMaker Go, that essentially uses the layouts that we're seeing here on screen, or different ones that are customized for iPhone and iPad. You may be aware of the Apple's war with Android, so they're currently not doing that. However, there is some other internet functionality, internet access that we are providing in Studio Suite that I will show you, that allows you to do some things from BlackBerry and Android. Let's see, how do you make child event items? I will show you that. And another question is do you have the application-specific demo for film post-production? It's all the same demo. So if you download the demo, there's a number of different sample data objects in there. We've got equipment, people, contacts. There's the AICP budget in there. We don't have a template yet in the demo, but you could make your own. We're working on that. We're going to have one for you shortly on the demo. And then what about Gmail as a client? Well, Gmail is really just a Gmail client. It's not decided to integrate with other things. If your browser is set up to use Gmail as your default email client, then Studio Suite should be able to send that out through there. Actually, I'm not 100% certain about that, and I should be. So I will try to find that out. I don't know if I'll have an answer for it right now. What I'm going to do, though, is go back to the question of how do you make child items. We can do that here in the project. We can adjust them here in the project, but I think what you're asking was, how do you create them initially as the part of the template? So I'm going to go into my categories and items, and I should be careful not to get too tweedy detailed here. I'm going to go look at my rooms. I'm going to go look at Avid 1, Avid 2 in this case. So here's the detail of this room, and I could say that whenever I book Avid 2, I want to add some other things. I want to add a Iowa super collector, because you could never get enough of those. Maybe I want to add in a person. So I'm going to add in Dana White as a person on this. And maybe I want to add in, we get the idea, some services. Whenever I book Avid 2, I'm also going to add maybe the thing called editing. Obviously, it's not a thing. So that's the answer to the question. You come to the categories and items module, go into the detail of an item, and this is where you can specify that when booking this item, also book. And there's some other things like maybe we do or don't want to check for conflicts on this. Maybe we do or don't want it to autofill times. For example, like some things, time is irrelevant. Like if you're just adding on a dub, the start and end time of when you are doing that work may or may not matter. And there's some other things there we're going to skip over for now. So that's how you define them originally. And then when I go back into a given project, I can go further. So let's say I want to add another item as a child to Byron. Let's say I know that he's going to need something else. So I'm going to go down here. I click on my gear tool. I go down to Add Child Item. I'm going to go into Equipment, and I know that he's going to need, I don't know, an Avalon processor number 6. So I've just added that as a child item, and we can see there it is right there. We can do some other kind of surgical things, like maybe I want to deassign it from Byron. I can do that. and maybe I want to duplicate, so there it's appeared at the bottom. I want to duplicate it. So now it's going to show up. I can specify what date. Yeah, I want that to come in on tomorrow, so I hit OK. So now we're going to have that same item appearing tomorrow from 9:45 to 6. There's some other kind of tweezy details here. Maybe I want to split the time. I want to put a lunch break in there. So I'm going to say that current event's going to end at 1 o'clock, then it's going to start again from 2 o'clock and go end at 6. So I hit OK. So we're going to see one more item appear here, and it's basically going to divide this one from 9:45 to 6 into 2. So that's how you can insert a lunch break in there. The other thing I wanted to do was book our webinar room, just to show you how that works. So I clicked on that Add Item button. I'm going to do it again. It's this button right here. And that brings me into my resources. And I can filter this by category if I want to. Maybe I've got a million rooms. I can also just type the name of it, W-E-B. So here's my webinar room. And it's going to come in with a default status for it, also the default rate. So remember, I set up the hourly rate as the default. I can change that here to the daily rate because I'm on the phone with the client right now and they're thinking it's going to be a daily thing. And it's also coming in with the default action. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my project. And we'll see it down at the bottom. There's webinar room. Maybe I want to adjust the price. It's only going to be an hourly thing. Okay, so I see there that the price has changed, and if I change the time here to 30 or 4, something like that, there it is. So save changes. Do I want to change everything else? I'll say no. Notice that the quantity of time has changed down here. Maybe I want to override the price. You're my friend, so I'm just going to click in there and let's call it $80 an hour. I can see those kind of price overrides in blue, so I know that they've been altered from the default rate. The start to end time is 7 hours. But for you, let's just say 6.5. Maybe we talked for a while. I don't want to bill you for that, even though it's still costing me 7 hours to do that. So as I put all these in there, it's tracked. You can see it's put in the default rates, and of course I can change those rates if I want to. And it's showing me what I'm going to bill for this. Because I set up my rates nicely, if I go to my expense view up here, it's also tracking the expense on the whole project. And when I know my billed amount versus my expense, that means I know my profit loss. So here's a charge column. I'm charging $4,700. It's costing me $1,400. Therefore, my profit is $33.72, or a 70.59% margin. It's always good to know that going in. So when the client says, "Oh, can you lower the price a little bit?" you know your margin right away. You don't have to figure it out or whip out Excel or a calculator. It's all right there. And because I had set up some items with market rates, there's my webinar room. I put in a $1,300 based on the hour. The price of this would normally be $1,300. I can see the difference between the market rate would be this $1,300 plus $400 equals $1,700, and I can see that there's a $3,000 difference between the market rate of here and there. And this is kind of weird data, so it doesn't necessarily make sense, but I think you can see what I mean. So I'm going to try to speed up the pace a little bit so I don't. So I can get everything in. So we've assembled everything here. We could have just as easily built all of that structure that we saw over here on the actual. We could have built it on the budget, and then hit this button here, send all to actual. In fact, I'm going to do that really quickly just so you believe me. I'm going to create a new project also so you can see how easy it is to do. Webinar 2, excuse my spelling. All my yellow fields are filled out. I'm going to create it as a budget. Hit next. Here I'm on a budget. I'm just going to go in and randomly add a bunch of items so you can see how this works. Boom. Got to book the bathroom, of course. Let's get some things that have rates. Studio B has a rate. Turn off the bathroom. Okay, so now we've got a couple rooms that are booked, and it's gonna. I'm not gonna do Avid 1 because that's gonna create a conflict. Oh, I didn't mention that. So here it's showing me that hey, there's a potential conflict if I book it. Yep, there's definitely a conflict, so I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna try to book Avid 2. So I'm gonna add all those things in there without dates because this is just a budget. Theoretical. We're talking about this. So here's my budget. I'm on my new project. Let's suppose we go in here and we put in some dates. We're going to talk about, so we're going to start this now on Friday. I'm going to slide those into place. And so now we've got some numbers here of how much this is going to be, and we can play with our rates a little bit here. Let's make this 200. And let's say the client agrees. We've printed this out, emailed it to them. They agree. I'm going to send this all to actual. So I'm going to hit send to actual. Do I want to do this? Yes, I do. And I'm going to clear out any quantity or price overrides that I've put in there. And they're going to revert to the default. I'm sorry, any time or quantity changes. The price overrides remain because we want these times to be based on what actually happens. So of course, in the reality of this, we're going to end up working much later than expected. We may even add some additional items. So we're on the actual side, so now this is happening. I'm going to go to Saturday, and we need more stuff. So I'm going to book some extra things here that weren't on the budget. Notice I'm adding them to the actual and not the budget. And what we end up with is a difference between the budget and the actual. This is kind of where the rubber hits the road, right? So on my difference view, I'm looking at what I budgeted. Here's what actually happened. If we look at edit 1, we budgeted 8 hours. That turned into 12, which is a difference of 4 hours, or a difference of $800 here in the difference column. So we budgeted $31.28 as a charge. It turned into $57.28, which is a difference of $2,600. Or 83.12%. So isn't it great to be able to see this as you're making changes, how you're doing from your budget? Okay, I'm going to move on. Tasks. So when you're doing these things, of course, you've got a bunch of tasks that you need to do. We can add these in one at a time, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to put a due date on here of tomorrow at 12. And I'm going to assign this to some people. I can assign it to one person if I want to, let's say to Alex. Or maybe I need all of my assistant engineers to know about this. So I can very quickly just plop in everybody of a given title or everybody in a certain group. I didn't talk about that in contacts, but we can create groups of people as well. So I'm going to hit done there. And now that task is shown up not only on the main menu of those people I assigned it to, but it's also shown up on the calendar. So here I am right there. It's for those people. There's my webinar number 2. It's in the calendar. Everybody knows about it. So I can create these tasks one at a time. I can also create what we call task groups. I've got one here called edit session I'm going to use. So I'm going to load that task group. And this will be kind of a thing that you do over and over and over again. So on a given project, I have to review the script, load the content, do the rough edit, tweak the edit, do the audio. I can rough out some dates here of when this is all going to appear, when it needs to get done. And of course, I can assign it to one or more people or groups of people of a certain title. Let's say all of the composers need to know about that. Okay, so I hit done, and all those people have now just been notified on the calendar and on the main menu about this. And as I showed you earlier, if we go into a given task, we can do a notification for this as well to send it out to the people that we have SMS info for. So that's tasks and notifications. I'm going to hit the back button to go back to where I was. So now I'm in my project. Notes in Creative. I'm going to add a note here with date timestamp, yada, 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 yada. And I can specify whether those notes are going to appear in the calendar. Sometimes they should, sometimes they shouldn't. Here I can assemble the different talent that's going to be working on this project, or different setup information, different formats, sizes, speeds, frame rates, different things like that. Let's go to media assets. This is important. Let's create a new related media asset in the library. This is a window showing us all of those assets, and we can't see them all yet. We don't have any, so I'm going to create one. Let's say we created 2. I'm going to call the first one R1 for real 1. It's created a library number and a barcode. It's asking me now for the name of the second one. I'm going to call that R2. And so now we've just created all these media assets. I could put in some different titles, cuts, cues, clips, scenes, spots, segments, songs, whatever we call them. And by doing that, we have now just created labels for all the different media formats. So here's a nice looking CD label. It's inherited all of my client project information, all the titles, barcodes, all that stuff, ready to go. You can customize those, of course. I'm talking fast because we're running out of time. So this is also, we also have the ability to track digital media assets. So I'm going to load in some specific metadata that I'm looking for, and I'm going to locate a given folder that I always use. introducing Final Cut Pro, and it's now going to go basically take a snapshot of all of the files and folders within that folder, all the creation and modification dates and times, and the other metadata that I asked for. So if I look for, say, timecode begin, I'm going to see all those timecode values there, and the other metadata that I requested. So of course I can launch these if I want to. So if I click on one of those files, it's going to open up in whatever that native application is, whether it's QuickTime or Final Cut, or Word or Excel or Photoshop or whatever. So we've got instant access to all the media assets that we're working with. And of course, I can go over to my Attach an FTP tab, drag one of those media assets in there. Let's say it's this one here, and I would have the ability to deliver this via FTP. I'm not going to do it now because we're short on time, but this would send an FTP directly out of Studio Suite to the destination, and we would have logging and the ability to do that. So I'm going to jump back to my library. Back to my project, and let's make an invoice. So I'm going to select all for invoice. It's gone down and checked these checkboxes, and it's not checking the items that don't have a rate, because it's assuming if you don't have a rate, you aren't going to invoice for it. If I want to, definitely put these on my invoice anyway, just to show you that I'm giving them for free, I can do that. So I'm going to now kind of manage these. Maybe I don't want to invoice for that. I'm going to overwrite the prices a little bit. This is just $20, so on and so forth. Once I get this all finalized how I like it, I'm going to invoice the selected items. I can either do this as a partial invoice if I want to, or a final, which is what I'm going to do. And now this is basically all going to get copied over to a new invoice in the invoices module. All those items, I don't need to mistype or retype all of that. Same price. All the taxes have come in appropriate to the client. And then I would just hit print this invoice. And here I am with a very nice looking printout. Of course, I can save this as a PDF if I like. Or if I want to, I could hit the email this invoice. That's going to create a PDF automatically and allow me to send it out directly through Studio Suite or a web client. And if I had this set up to connected to QuickBooks, this button right here would say Export to QuickBooks. I could click this button, and it would this invoice would instantly show up in QuickBooks if I was on a PC, or if I was using QuickBooks Online. You may know that the Mac version of QuickBooks is a little bit behind the times, and so in that case, we export a file to desktop and then import it into QuickBooks. So let's look at a couple things here. I'm going to jump back to this client. And that was the second project that we created. I should have done my invoice on the first one. But what I want to do is show you that from that client, we see all the information that we just created. So I'm in contacts. So here's that project I just created. I can jump right to that project. I can see all the details of that project. Jumping back to the client, I can go to the financial information. Here's that invoice that we just created. I could jump right to it. Now I'm looking at that invoice. I hit the back button. Go back to my contact again. I go to the Media Assets tab, still within Contacts, and this is going to allow me to see all of the media assets that I just created for it. There's my Webinar 2 media assets, and of course from there I can jump back to the project. So let's get into some other stuff. I'm going to hide FileMaker right now, and what we're looking at now is my iPad. This is sitting right next to me, and I always have to take my hand off the mouse and do it with the iPad. So you'll notice that all of the changes that I made are showing up on my iPad. I'm going to go into my projects module, and we're going to be able to see that project that I just created on my iPad. All the resources, all the dates, all the times. And I think my iPad might have been asleep or disconnected, but here it is, finally coming up. So here's my iPad. I can scroll down, look at this stuff. If I want to go look at the first project that we created, it's going to come up here in a second. Here's all the items that I booked. If I want to edit one of these, notice down the bottom I've got my webinar room. I'm just going to touch on that, and that's going to bring up the edit window to where I can make any edits to that. Let's say they're going to end, I'm walking around my facility now. I'm just going to end this at 6 o'clock. And let's say we've got to put in some notes here about why we went a little bit late. Boo, 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 boo. Save changes. And so now that change is going to get reflected back in Studio Suite. So notice it ends at 4 there. I'm going to go back into Studio Suite. I'm going to look at my first one here. First project that we created. I'm going to go down in Webinar Room. It's ending at 4. So there's a lot on the iPad. We don't have time to get into it right now because I do want to show you some other stuff. But you can do the basic functionality of Studio Suite from the iPad. So I'm going to hide that. I'm going to hide FileMaker, and I'm going to go into Chrome because I want to show you a couple things here. So this is some of the web functionality that comes with the network version of Studio Suite. So there's a web request module, and this is going to allow you to post this on your website where you could put in, allow your customers to put in their name, email, and information, and they can specify specific equipment that they want to use to reserve. Maybe they want to book your Pro Tools system. Maybe they then also want to have a room. So we're going to go down to Rooms and pick a room that we're looking at here. So I want to book Edit 1. So they can assemble all these things into a request that shows up in Studio Suite as a web request. Everybody gets an email. That request can be accepted, send out another email that shows up as a new project in Studio Suite, and then they're there. So basically a front end to allow your users to request stuff in Studio Suite. So I'm going to go back a little bit here, and let's look at Web Glancer. So Web Glancer is a secure login. I'm going to go ahead and log in. So this is where your staff can log in at nighttime or whatever from home and be able to look at read-only. Everything in Web Glancer is read-only. So maybe I want to look at Sony. I want to look up somebody at Sony. Here's all my people there. Let's go look at Simon. Here's information from the Studio Suite Contacts module. Read-only in the web. Obviously, it's a secure access, so only people that you give Studio Suite user accounts would be able to see this. And a read-only calendar. So an important thing about this is that this does not occupy a seat. So Studio Suite is sold by the seat, but you can have 100 people looking at this, and it doesn't use your seat count. So notice here is our webinar demo and our webinar 2. So everything that we scheduled is showing up right here in the what we call Web Glancer calendar. And there's also a mobile version of that shows up on mobile devices. Also, our tasks can show up there as well. I'm going to show you the mobile version that would show up on your phone. So this is also a secure login. So if we shrink this down to what would look like on your phone, it looks kind of like that. And then we could go into, say, calendar. And here's all the stuff that we just scheduled for our project. There's our webinar right there, webinar room that we created on our project. So this is pretty neat. And you can see it's fairly fast too. So that's the mobile item. And if we click on one of these, we'll see all the details of that, and we can go back. So the really cool thing that I want to save the best for last is Google Calendar. I'm going to zoom into Thursday. Everything that we scheduled in Studio Suite on our project, on our webinar project, is right here in Google Calendar. So I've got access to this because I logged in. So this is a secure access. You can also invite people to these calendars so that they don't have the ability to make changes. But if I do give them ability, notice this ends at 5:30. This is edit 1 on our webinar demo ending at 5:30. I'm going to make a change in Google Calendar to have it end at 2 o'clock. This is Thursday, edit 1, now ending at 2 o'clock. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to go back into Studio Suite, find it here, edit 1 on Thursday. In a minute, we're going to see this change, this 5:30, and while we wait for that to change, it happens every few minutes. It's obviously not a live connection, but there's a script that runs every few minutes that checks that. So while that's doing that, I'm going to look at some questions. Gmail. Is the limit of user accounts. Okay, you can make as many user accounts as you want. However, it's only going to let the maximum number of users onto Studio Suite at once. So if let's say you bought a 5-pack of Studio Suite, you could create 100 users. It's only going to let any random dynamic floating 5 of those on at once. So if a 6th person wants to sign on, one of those first 5 is going to have to sign off. So as I was doing that question, sure enough, that edit 1, we can see here that it changed to 2 o'clock right in Studio Suite, and that's been changed in Calendar. Now, if you keep in mind that you can access your Google Calendar on your phone, that means that you can make changes to StuSuite schedules from your StuSuite from your Google Calendar on your phone. And so if we go look at this Google Calendar, there it is right there. I'm going to go back into Studio Suite and make another change on that same item. And let's say this time I'm going to end it at, I don't know, noon, 12 p.m. Save change. Do I want to change everything else? I'll say no. And so obviously the change is two ways. It's going to take a minute to occur. And while that's occurring, I'm going to just see if there's any more questions. And we've only got a few minutes left, so if you've got questions, now would be a good time. Can we use our current Gmail calendars with Studio Suite? Okay, so if I look at this Google Calendar, what we see on the left here is your calendars. These calendars here were created from Studio Suite because there needs to be a ID connection between Studio Suite and Google. So when something changes in Google, it knows to go change it in Studio Suite. So if you've got yourself in your Google Calendar and you want to schedule yourself from Studio Suite, you actually do have to send a new instance of yourself from Studio Suite to the Google Calendar. And then you can either have both of them visible or eventually merge all of your the stuff in your original instance of yourself in Google Calendar to the new instance of yourself in Google Calendar. And one important thing to know is that the things that are showing up in Calendar from Studio Suite must be created in Studio Suite. If you create an event in Google Calendar, Studio Suite doesn't know anything about that because Google Calendar doesn't have any concept of clients and projects and things like that. So it's what Studio Suite Connection Calendar has got to come from Studio Suite. You can edit it in Google Calendar, but then it needs to be got to create it in Studio Suite. Getting tongue-tied here, but I think you know what I mean. Let's see, we've got just a couple minutes left. Any more questions? Is there any way to back up all the data in Studio Suite X? Yes. So Studio Suite runs in FileMaker. FileMaker Pro on your desktop and on your server, the FileMaker Server application. Within FileMaker Server, there is a whole backup schedule utility. You can create a bunch of different schedules so that it will back up whatever interval you're comfortable with. Here, we do it every hour because we're developing. For you, it may be every couple hours or even once a day, depending on the volume of data that you put in and how catastrophic it would be to lose a few hours of work. And so just a couple quick notes on that. You want to make sure that those backups that FileMaker Server is creating are getting put on a separate hard drive, of course, because if that hard drive fails, you want to have the other hard drive to be available. And you also want to turn off indexing on your primary file so that your server is not constantly monitoring for search purposes the files that the FileMaker Server is hosting out. And then you also want to make sure that if you're on a Mac, that Time Machine is not trying to back up the live hosted files in FileMaker Server. You want it to only back up the backups, so to speak. And so there's a very good backup system protocol for Studio Suite. So I think we are about at the end. And believe it or not, I've actually only touched on a little bit of Studio Suite. Actually, I've got a couple minutes here. So quick log is important. Let's say you pass me in the hallway. I'm an editor. And you say, hey, will you redo the edit on that thing? You didn't schedule me on it, so it doesn't show up here yet. But I got to log my time. So I'm going to click the quick log button. Try saying that 5 times. And this is showing me a list of all the projects that I've got going on this week. And let's say that the one I'm working on is called Webinar Demo. For ABC, that's the one. And I'm just going to type my name here, J-O-E. And this reduces the list down to myself or people that have J-O-E in their name. And so that's showing me I'm creating a conflict. I'm going to hover over that. It's going to show me what I'm conflicting with. So I'm already booked 9 to 5. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and book myself from, say, 5:30 to 6 on a re-edit per dude in hallway. So I'm going to go ahead and book myself on that project, and then I can even go in at the bottom there and say that I am now complete. So I'm going to click on that and say that I have now completed this project, this task, and that way everybody would know about it. And so if I go back to my main menu and I scroll down the bottom, there it is right there. And I can edit it from here also. Okay, I'm going to try to do a couple things real quick. Studio Suite comes with a barcodes module, allowing you to print out sheets and sheets of either barcodes for media tracking, if you've got physical media assets, or for equipment tracking. Works on regular Avery labels or Dymo style labels. Equipment maintenance we didn't really get into, but this allows you to manage all of the maintenance that you're doing and track all of that. There's also employee schedules. You can go ahead and create a schedule for your staff in this module. You can schedule time as with different statuses, like time off or family leave or vacation or you're sick or whatever statuses you want to create. And then those items can show up in the calendar module, so you can see when people are booked, when you shouldn't book them, and all that kind of thing. Web request, I mentioned that a minute ago. So this is where we can come in and see the items that have been requested. Let me see if I've got one here. We got a bunch of demo data from NAB in here. Anyway, that we would see the items here and the contact info, and then we would be able to hit accept request. Okay, we're about out of time. Let me see if there's any last question. We are all good on questions. Thank you all so much, everybody, for watching. The next webinar is next Thursday, and it is going to be on the basics chapter of Studio Suite. Just kind of the basics, not even a functional. Well, it is functional on things like, but that's the go-to button. Here's how you create records, duplicate records. So it's one of the first things that you would look at. Thank you all so much. Please give us a ring if you've got any questions. We look forward to hearing from you.